All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about Tua Tagovailoa more. Where the contract negotiations kind of stand. We'll actually talk about some comments made by ESPN's Jeff Darlington on where everything currently stands at the moment. So let's get into that. So he recently said that even though Miami and Tua have not yet come to terms on a new deal, the two sides have remained in consistent contact since talks from June. And this is a direct quote from him. He said, "While I can't say that there is anything imminent in terms of a deal as we inch closer to training camp, I can at least tell you that there have been active negotiations since then. They continue to try to get this done with a very amicable approach. It does not appear that this is going sideways by any means." So I guess that's encouraging. That it's not like the Brandon Ayuk negotiation. I know it's a different position, but it's not like the Brandon Ayuk negotiations where it just seems like things are going in the wrong direction. Even though the 49ers and Ayuk have recently met, but now there's something else going on with Ayuk posting footage of the Commanders. So I don't know what's going on there. I just can it just end already? But we're it seems like we're ways away from that getting to a conclusion as well. But at least here with Tua, it seems like things are heading in the right direction and that they're eventually going to get a deal done. Now, I know I talked about this as well on a previous show that they're not going to give him, Trevor Lawrence or Jared Goff type money, but they're going to give him a good contract, it seems. And I know I was of the stance that maybe, you let him play out his current deal and then you see what happens, after that. And looking at Tua's numbers, so he has a decent record, well, a good record overall with the Dolphins. 32-19 overall record with the Dolphins. He's got, a little over 12,639 passing yards and 81 touchdowns over 4 seasons. Last year, 4,600 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. He had a good season. He was solid. I mean, I said maybe you want to see him, reach that 30 touchdown plateau and you kind of see the interceptions go down and, maybe throw for a little bit more. Well, to a lesser extent, maybe throw for a little bit more yards because throwing for 4,600 yards is really impressive. I mean, he led the entire league in passing yards. And it helps when you have guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I know they also did add Odell Beckham Jr. as well. I mean, if you were adding the Odell Beckham Jr. from 10 years ago, that would be amazing. I mean, what a receiving core. But, already it is a good receiving core. But, yeah, Odell is not the same player that he once was. But I think as a number 3 option, I mean, I don't think that's bad. And on top of that, you're going to be running the ball a bunch of times with Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. So, Odell's kind of one of the, secondary options in this track star of an offense, really. But yeah, I'm curious to see how this plays out. Like I said, I was leaning towards maybe you let Tua play it out, and then you kind of reconvene at the end of the year. But if they give him a new deal that's less than Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff money, I'm fine with that. More so, I guess more so Jared Goff, because even when Trevor Lawrence, I said I think Trevor Lawrence deserved to get paid, but not $55 million a year, because Trevor Lawrence has something to prove too. Tua had a better season than him. The Dolphins made the playoffs. They went 11-6. The Jags, they collapsed. They finished 9-8. Now, I think part of that had to do with Trevor Lawrence getting hurt, but we got to see Trevor Lawrence look more so like he did in 2022, not like how he was last year, especially in the second half. Tua, I think, he deserves to get paid based off the season he had, but again, I just don't think he's a guy that should be making $50+ million a year. But if that's what he ends up getting, then so be it. That's what the Dolphins decide to do. I don't know what the price range is, but at least it's not $55 million. Now, for me, I think Joe Burrow deserved the $55 million because he's a guy that's made it to back-to-back AFC Championship games. He made it to a Super Bowl. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Tua's kind of in like that second tier. Trevor Lawrence is probably in that second tier. And you look at Jared Goff. Jared Goff's been to a Super Bowl now. It was with not the team that he's with now, but he also did take that team, the Lions, to the NFC Championship game last year, and he's coming off of a very good year. So, Tua and Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence at least has a playoff win, but last year was disappointment. Tua, we got to see more. I want to see how he does in the postseason. I mean, the game against the Chiefs. I don't think many teams are going to beat the Chiefs in that environment. I don't even know if any team would beat them in that environment. So I'm not really going to hold that playoff loss against him. Again, you still lost the playoff game, but that was a tough challenge. But what I have held Tua to is the fact that last year they only beat one team with a winning record. That's where I have a problem. That was over the course of the whole season. That wasn't just, that one game against the Chiefs. You had the other game against the Chiefs in Germany, against the Ravens, the Bills a couple times, the Eagles before they collapsed. You lost against every other team, besides the Cowboys. You've lost against every other team that had a winning record during the season. But against all these bad teams, like when the Broncos were really bad, you put up 70 points against them. You beat up on the Patriots. You beat up on the Jets. Yeah, seeing Tyreek Hill take it to the house constantly for 70 yards, also against the Giants and the Panthers. It's a lot of fun to watch, but can we see that against better teams? And when they had that collapse against the Titans, when they were up by a couple scores and they lost that lead late in the game, yeah, that wasn't good either. And Tyreek Hill got hurt in that game. And Tua just did not play well. That's where my criticisms of Tua come from. So I want to see what he can do against these better teams. You got those teams in your division. I think the Jets are going to be better. You still got to respect the Bills. I know they've gone through a lot of changes, but you still got to respect them. Show me that you could beat these better teams. And then, I will, those criticisms will go away. But, yeah, the late season collapse. The Dolphins had a chance to get the 2 seed in the AFC East, or the AFC, win the division, get the 2 seed, and they ended up choking that away. They lost to the Bills the final week of the regular season. They had a chance to win that game. And they had a date with the Chiefs in Arrowhead in those frigid conditions. And they were one and done. Other than that touchdown to Tyreek Hill, they really could not get anything going. Now, who knows what would have happened if they had that 2 seed and they, were playing at home. But that's just what ended up happening. So, for me, like I said, I think Tua had a solid year, but I want to see more. I want to see him put up good numbers against these better teams. And I know we had this conversation already today about the conference. It's a loaded conference. Show us that you belong in the conversation with some of these elite teams. Because those teams that you went up against, the 2 teams that you faced that faced off in the AFC Championship game, you went 0-3. And the Ravens dropped, 50 plus points on you? Show us that you belong with those teams. So it's a big year for Tua. Now, if he gets that new deal, like I said, so be it. For me, I think the Dolphins maybe should go in a different direction because I don't know if Tua is the long-term answer. But that's just me saying that. If the Dolphins give him the contract, that they believe he's the long-term answer. And you know what? I don't want to be right. You know what? I want him to go out there and show that, yeah, he belongs with these top tier quarterbacks. The Dolphins, with him as a starting quarterback, that they belong as one of the elite teams in the NFL. But for me, from what I saw last year, they put up he put up a lot of good numbers against bad teams, and then against the good teams, he really didn't do that good. So we'll see what happens. Now, I expect the Dolphins to be a good team, finish with a decent record, get into the playoffs maybe, and then we'll go from there. Because there's too much talent on this team where I just don't think they're going to make it. Now, the way I talk, you would think I have like every team from the AFC making the playoffs. But like I said, you could make the case for a lot of these teams. There's maybe like 3 or 4 where you're like, they're probably not. Like the Broncos, I said, the Patriots, I'm trying to think of who else. Maybe a team or two in the AFC South, but other than that, you could make a case for a lot of these teams to make the playoffs. Now, there's only 3 wild card spots, and you got the 4 divisions. So, not everybody's going to make it. Dolphins are one of those teams that you can make a strong case that this team should be in the playoffs. But we'll have to wait and see. So, there isn't any major news when it comes to the Tua contract stuff, but it at least seems like it's moving in the right direction, and we should see a new deal agreed upon at some point. But who knows? Maybe they wait till the end of the year. That's also a possibility. So let me know what you guys think, though. Should the Dolphins wait till the end of the year to maybe give Tua a new deal? Should they go in a different direction? Or should Tua get his money right now? Do you think he's the long-term answer with the Dolphins? It's an interesting conversation to be had. Because, again, he did put up solid numbers. But it's just there's still some question marks there in some people's eyes, including mine. So when we come back from our next break, we'll talk about the Lions. I know I touched upon Jared Goff a little bit. We'll talk about the Lions, just some comments made by Aiden Hutchinson on the Lions' 2024 season. I'll give my thoughts on what he had to say when we come back from our next break. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.